Well, hello everyone and welcome. I am Delegate Lori Charkoudian, and I'm so excited to have my guest here with me, Tierney Acosta, who is an expert on many things in the food system, but today talking about food forests. And if you haven't heard me talk recently, my new obsession is food forests. Well, I don't know if it's new anymore. It's really been about a year or two, maybe since I've met Tierney, that I've been obsessed with food forests. But Tierney really has developed food forests, built food forests, and is an expert on it. And so we're so excited to have her with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure. I'm a huge fan of Delegate Charkoudian and all the work she does, and her giving us time to talk about food forests and how important they are. We couldn't appreciate it more.
So we're going to try to put food forests in the context of the broader issue of our food system, our climate issues. But before we sort of talk about all those pieces, can you just tell us, like, what is the base definition of food forests? How do you define a food forest?
So, a food forest is such a great question. Is taking what we see in nature, so kind of the layers that you see in a forest, for example, and taking that and utilizing those layers in our own spaces to grow a lot of food. So we really maximize the amount of food that we have by utilizing vertical layers, which is amazing. So in a forest, you could see like large canopy trees, like oak trees. That's something that we actually use and we process acorns as well at our food forest. So that covers one layer for us. Then hopping down, we have our lower canopy trees. So like our apple trees, our hazelnut trees, our witch hazel. All of those lower canopy trees add some more food medicinals for us. You hop down a little bit more to our shrubs. We have blueberries, we have service berries, we have bush cherries, anything that's kind of a little smaller than a tree, still maximizing the food though. Then we have our herbaceous layer. That's anything that grows above the ground, isn't necessarily a bush. So our rosemary, our lavender, basil, all the things kind of like that. We then look at our ground cover layers, so strawberries, spinach, squash is even a great example of that, something that grows low, covers the ground, and also serves as an additional food for us. Sweet potatoes are actually one of our favorites as a dual crop for that. And sweet potatoes are a great example of our root layer as well. So having things that grow under the ground, sweet potatoes, carrots, onions, garlic, all of that is covered. And then you have a vining layer. So we have grapes, we have hops, we have a few different vining species within our food forest, and then the mushroom layer. So around 7 to 8 layers of food, all growing very close together and maximizing, again, those vertical layers is really the substance of the food forest.
So lots of cool stuff in there. So I think there's this way that a natural forest grows in this way, has layers. And if I'm not mistaken, the layers of a forest have a sort of symbiotic relationship with each other, right? So like each layer supports other layers, and there's reasons that evolution has given us forests in this way. And so you're taking those same concepts that evolution has created for healthy ecosystems in a forest context, and you're creating them, replicating them in a way that is specific to those same layers, but all food that humans can eat and animals can eat, but all foods, which you may or may not find in a natural forest. You would find some things that humans can eat, but not in the same way that you would find it in your food forest. Is that sort of right?
You hit it on the head.
Okay. All
Correct.
right. So we're learning from nature,
Yes.
So there's a couple of things that it seems to me is important about this. And I want to start, like, right now, folks are really concerned about food security in our communities. And so I feel like we need to start there. There's so much going on in a food forest, but one of the pieces that food forests respond to is the challenges of food insecurity. And so can you talk a little bit about, like, who has access to this? Where are the food forests? Like, how does it address food insecurity in our communities?
Absolutely. And that's one of the most important points that we love to explain to people and is really the catalyst of why the food forests exist on the Montgomery College campuses at all. So 40% of our students at the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus, before all of our difficulties with SNAP, before any other difficulties that we're facing, are food insecure, which means that they don't have access regularly to local, nutritious, fresh foods. And that was a huge eye opener for myself, the members of my club, the members of the nonprofit that we've partnered with. And we just really wanted to face that head on. And looking at the idea of a food forest, it really made sense to me that that was how we're going to add another option for people's food sovereignty onto our campus specifically, because it doesn't solve everything, but it adds another option for people to understand, not only to get their own food, but to understand how to grow their own food and leave the campus once they graduate and move on with skills like how to grow their own food, how to start their own seeds, and then how to share that and process that with their neighbors, which is amazing. And we love it. But we really wanted this to be accessible to everyone. So you don't have to be a student at Montgomery College. You don't have to live in Maryland. You don't even have to need the food. If you want it, it's yours to take. And you don't have to ask permission. Obviously, we ask people to think of their neighbors, especially during this time around the holidays where people are feeling that extra need. But we have tried to make it as accessible as possible for everybody.
Yeah. And so I think this is a really important thing that I want to just repeat is that literally anyone can walk up to this public space. It is on the corner of East West Highway and what's the cross street?
Philadelphia and Chicago is one of them. And then the East West Highway, and I'm forgetting the other street, but right in front of the footbridge at our campus that takes you over the metro tracks. We're adding a third space, hopefully in the spring, in front of our Performing Arts Center. So there'll be even more.
And so that's on Georgia Avenue. So yeah. These are spots that are on bus routes. So there's all the students who are going to the school, but there's also people who live in the neighborhood who are on bus routes, who are exchanging buses, wherever they're headed, right? Yes. And literally anyone can walk onto this space and help themselves to whatever they want, whatever they need. And I think that's a really important thing as we think about our public spaces and how we use our public spaces. And so we know that public green spaces are important. And this adds a whole nother thing. We're going to talk about the environmental benefits and the sustainability benefits in a second, but we're talking about public spaces, green spaces, spaces that are responding to heat island effect by having trees in urban areas. And now on top of that, we're saying, help yourself to the food you need, consider other people, and take what you need, take what you want. And I think that's really important. And one of the things that it also highlights is that people do care about their neighbors. People are not coming and decimating the trees. They're not coming and taking everything so there's nothing left for the person who comes behind them, that we actually can trust each other in these spaces. We put this food in this public space, in this really extraordinary, beautiful replication of how nature cares for us and each other and cares for itself. And it works, right? And so I think that's just a really important piece of it. And so on that, so we're talking about the Montgomery College Food Forest, which is the one that you were a leader in getting built. And shout out to you, to the Permaculture Club, but also to Montgomery College and to the president of Montgomery College, who said, yes. We were like, sounds like something of a crazy idea. We're like talking to the president of a college, like, here's the idea. Take this lawn and it has 3 trees on it and turn it into a forest, and it's gonna be a food forest, and we're just gonna tell everybody they can come pick food and eat it, right? Like it sounds a little crazy if you've normally just sort of had lawns and trees before. And so he said yes, and the college has been very supportive of these efforts. So we do need to give a shout out to the college, as well as the Food Forest Collective, bunch of volunteers. We're going to talk about how that came about in just a second. But can you talk about, there are food forests all over the state of Maryland. And so can you talk about the other ones that you're connected to or aware of or know about?
Absolutely. So we are not individual in our knowing that food forests make the world a better place. And it's been really amazing for me to see how many already exist and how many people are starting, because they recognize the need and they recognize that this is a system that doesn't only work for humans, but also our non-human counterparts. And it's just beneficial for everyone. So there is an edible trail in White Marsh who right now is being cared for and stewarded by Francis Smith of DNR, which we love.
And that's White Marsh. That's in Queen Anne's County.
Yes.
So Queen Anne's County. Yes. Because there's also White Marsh in, I think, Baltimore County.
Yes, there is. We also have the food forest in Hyattsville on Emerson Street. We have Forested in Bowie, who is stewarded by Lincoln Smith. He's their president, and that is a really established food forest. Ours are still in the baby phases. So people sometimes are like, well, when is it going to happen? But food forests typically take around 5 to 8 years to reach maturity with all of those larger layers being able to come into play. But forests that has been around for a while, they serve as a great example of what it means to truly be a large and in charge food forest. Theirs is matured. They've been doing it for years and they really know what they're talking about. They have helped us with so many things on our food forest, just advice and getting people into the space and loving the space. UMBC also has a food forest on their campus that, if correct me if I'm not wrong, but also was started by students who recognized need. We also have the Reed Center in Frederick County, and they are like a 270 square acre food forest, so to speak. They are really doing it all. They're having workshops all the time. They have different groups of kids and different groups in the community come to visit and learn hands-on what they're doing. And more importantly than anything else I have said previously, all of these spaces, again, teach people how to take it home and you can start on an apartment balcony and have a food forest, which sounds really odd, but you can follow that model in a small space and really maximize the food that you're getting out of it.
Yes. And then there's one in Baltimore. I feel like you were telling me about one in Baltimore.
The Baltimore Orchard Project. They kind of are making food forests all over inner city Baltimore. I absolutely love the work that they're doing. They're getting people blueberry bushes. They're getting people fruit trees. They're making sure that, one, they're adding more trees into the spaces to fight those heat island effects that we see so often in cities. And two, they are really, truly planting seeds to spread the wealth of being able to have food, which is incredible. And people really, really love the work that they're doing. And I think they've been wholeheartedly just taken in by the community. I think they're really a pillar of force in their communities now.
Fantastic. So we've talked about it's happening everywhere, and we want to encourage it to happen more. And in fact, I have a piece of legislation on this that we'll come back to. So really want to make sure that everyone has access in their communities to food forests. We have you talked a little bit about the education piece. I wonder if you can talk about the volunteers. I think one of the really impressive things, as I've watched the one that is in my district, the one at Montgomery College, is the way that, one, just how volunteer led and run it is, the way that you have the core volunteers, like folks who are looking out for it on a day-to-day basis, but then like huge numbers of people whenever there's an event, like, okay, we're working in the food forest, like people come out of, I don't even know, like the woodwork, come out of the neighborhoods, like everyone's there. There's the education piece, little kids, older kids, teenagers, college students, you've got like seniors, elders, like everybody's there, right? Learning and doing. And it's just it's part of, like we were talking earlier about, people come and take the food that they need or want and look out for their neighbors. They don't walk away with everything. The way that the community cares for it feels like it's part of this way, like we can trust each other, we can care for each other at a time when folks are so cynical. Watching the way a community puts together a food forest for everybody in it feels like it is the antidote to that cynicism. It's like the community building aspect of it is just such an antidote to the cynicism that and the sort of folks are watching around the country, the really hard times it feels like we're in.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think at a time where we as a nation are so polarized, it can be easy to kind of get lost in all the negative that is happening that you don't have control over. And I think one of the beautiful things about sites like this is that the community does have control over it. They have complete ownership over this space and over everything that comes out of it. And as a collective, I think it makes such a difference. It is a different mindset for people to have. And I tell people all the time who walk by as we're doing volunteer days, like you said, we have easily 50 people every time we have a volunteer day who are new to us that come outside of our core group. We've had people that come from DC. We've had people drive from Virginia over because they just want to learn and see it. And it shocks me every time. I'm so happy when one person shows up. To have 50 people just happy to help and learn and interact with each other is such a beautiful thing. And I think our communities need more of this now more than ever, because our food systems are so fragile, because we've lost generationally the information and the knowledge on how to grow your own food. I think these spaces serve as an amazing third space for our community. and different organizations and different agencies have had their own events within these spaces, which I think is also an amazing thing. But it is truly intergenerational, down to we will have 4-year-olds running around, we will have 94-year-olds running around at the same space and all interacting with each other and sharing knowledge and sharing resources and sharing food, most importantly. And it is really a beautiful thing. And I think the community was hungry for that. And I think they responded to us coming together and saying, this is, as a collective community, this is all of ours. Who wants to be a part of it? People come out of the neighborhood, shovels in hand, ready to help. And it's just such an amazing thing.
The community was hungry for that. That's like pun intended.
Literally.
Every time you go up, you're like grabbing a leaf off of something that I didn't even know like what it was or that you could eat. And I I grow food. I know a good bit about food, but you're like, this is a new leaf you've never munched on before. And I'm like doing that. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. That's so I continue to learn so much myself. So, I can't talk about something and not talk and not connect it to the climate piece of it, because this is so important. And I just want to talk a little bit about the ways that food forests address climate change, right? And so we're talking about what was lawn and all of the problems with lawn in terms of fertilizer and mowing and sort of really as a carbon, as something that adds carbon to the environment, even if it's relatively low maintenance, to something that is a carbon sequestration, carbon sink. And so I wonder, can you talk a little bit about that part of it, that transition, and how it is a carbon sequestration system?
So in our sites, I believe we added around, initially 8 inches all over the 30,000 square feet of compost, and then 8 inches of wood chips. So we're all local. So we're keeping these loops really small, really tight spaces, because we want to keep that carbon in and we want to keep that water in. And the more that we do that, the better the plants are, which is like fantastic to look at. Just changing that soil composition so that it's able to go from a lawn, which a lot of people think, it's green, it must be good. There are benefits to having a lawn, 110%. But it doesn't sequester that much carbon. It doesn't take in that much water, as we're seeing these bigger storms, more frequent storms with climate change. Having plants in an ecosystem that are able to really take in that water, so we're not experiencing flooding all over our streets and losing that water, having it rip away our stream beds and that kind of thing, is something that we've taken into account in our design. So holding in as much carbon as we can and as much water as we can are always our goals. And by adding all of this organic matter in, as well as a myriad of native plants who have different complex root structures, that some of them go like 30 feet down, if it allows it to, really hold that carbon in and really hold that water in, so that it makes a difference in an area where we live, where the bay really is everything and holds life for everything. It has a huge effect on the bay.
Yeah. So that healthy soils piece, right, being so important in regenerative agriculture, healthy soils being part of what sequesters the carbon, and then all the layers of plants, right, having so many plants, right, all of which are, breathe the carbon dioxide. So, so fantastic. And then, of course, I think the other piece is just when we're thinking about our food systems, in addition to having food systems where so much of the way food is grown itself, in monocultures, it with a lot of fertilizer and so on, is really damaging to the climate, to our health, to the quality of the food. But also, so much of it is just shipped all over the country, right? And it sits in crates, and it's, the carbon footprint of the individual sweet potato coming from wherever, 3,000 miles away. And so that idea of having more of the food, and we're working on this, of course, in so many ways, but food forest being one of them, like more of the food grown here has that broader impact of not having food that's driven around the country and, in Mack trucks. And then the other piece of it is, when we're thinking about climate impacts, there's the climate benefit that it presents. And then the other thing is, as we sort of learned in COVID about the supply chain disruptions, and, as climate impacts increase, we're doing everything we can to divert and mitigate from the worst of the climate impacts. But there are climate impacts, and they will continue to be worsening storms and so on, with the potential for climate caused disruptions to our supply chains. And so there's this resilience aspect to the food forest in terms of making sure that we are growing food in our own neighborhoods, so that when when sort of the worst of those climate impacts strike, we have food here, for our neighbors that we can eat. So really important. And then I think the last thing, I feel like we could talk about this forever. The last thing is, it's so freaking beautiful. Let's talk a little bit about how beautiful a food forest is, and just the beauty and the importance of that in our spaces, in our public spaces.
I agree with you 110% there. I have some uncles who would say that a lawn is the epitome of beauty over anything. And I have to say no. I have to say no to that. It is such a beautiful thing to see. First off, it's a site full of life. And if we're being really real, a lawn is an ecological dead zone. It doesn't have any shelter for anything. It doesn't offer us any food. It offers us something to do against our will on the weekends, if we choose to do it, or hiring that out to somebody, spending money, and spending all that gas. So this really has taken shape in a way that is so gorgeous. And our facilities management can agree. They were very nervous about this project, about what parts they would have to take on. They love this project. They have not had to take anything on. They are amazed at how it is grown right in front of their eyes. Before, when it was lawn, it was totally their responsibility, and they hated it. They hated trying to make the lawn grow. I think everyone who lives around here in Maryland knows how hot and dry our summers are. It's in some spaces almost impossible to keep grass growing where it is. And they love that you can tell with the plants that we've put in, especially the native plants, they're supposed to be there. They're accustomed to this. They've evolved to this, and they're bringing life in every step of the way, which is amazing. We actually had in July our first black bear peruse the food forest, which was incredible.
Wow.
And it was an amazing thing, because it really showed.
Wait a second. Like, how do you know? Like,
it left us gifts. There was bear poop all over the food forest, which is awesome, full of berry seeds. So really, it was doing a lot of the hard work for us in replanting and dispersing those seeds, which is awesome. But we can support not only humans, but the largest of our apex predators here in Maryland. And that was just something really cool that we got to see. And beautiful. It said, this is where all the food is. I'm coming here. We have not seen it since, but we were very happy that it came to visit for a while. But it really is full of life. We've had monarch butterflies come through as they're making their migration back to Mexico here late in summer and early fall. We have had so many different kinds of insects, so many different kinds of migratory birds. We have a pair of mating red-tailed hawks that come and visit us and help with the rodent care of it all. And when you do a system like this, not only is it beautiful, but it really has those natural checks and balances that you would find in a forest. So some people think, oh, a rodent, that must be terrible for what you all do. Not at all. It's part of the ecosystem. And it really does balance itself out. We haven't had, knock on wood, any huge problems. The deer have given us the most problems, as they do for everyone in Montgomery County, I think.
Well, they are, and they're out of balance in the ecosystem, right?
Yes, they are. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, these spaces show what a healthy forest in Maryland could look like. And that's a really important point, I think, with the white-tailed deer being out of balance because of our lack of apex predators. A lot of our forests in Maryland are lacking a lot of the layers that we talked about that we find in this space. And it's because we're so overrun with white-tailed deer, there's not a balance. So they've eaten up all of the shrubs. They've eaten up a lot of the vines. So a lot of the forests around here are just really tall trees with nothing in between. And we are showing that we can make a space like this. And who's to say we can't spread that over to other parts of Maryland? One of the other beautiful things that we're doing, because this beautiful space gives us so much, is collecting seeds from it and putting it into our new seed library that is accessible to the public in our new library on campus as well. Because we want people to be so inspired by all the beauty that they're seeing that they're able to take it home. No questions asked. So
seed library it's not borrowing. It's like It's like a seed bank. People could take it home and
It's like a seed bank. That's an even better
bring
way.
seeds back, I suppose, if they grow the food and then have seeds to share.
Yeah,
But then people can just come take.
absolutely. And people
Excellent.
can come give us, if they have extra seeds, we will take them. And we were
Seed
happy.
exchange, we might call
Yes,
it.
exactly.
So that's so great. Okay, we could talk about this forever. Did you have any? We're going to wrap up in a couple minutes, but did you have any final stories that you wanted to share, or stuff you haven't had a chance to talk about?
I think one of the anecdotes that I really love to watch as this site has evolved, when we were first, I think almost 2 years ago now, getting our first trees into the site. So our first plum trees, our first apple trees, our first witch hazel trees, a lot of families came out to do that, intergenerational. So grandparents with toddlers, and they were all taking pictures with the trees that they planted and very, very lovingly saying, oh, this is our tree. This is what we've done together. And then I would come over to them and we would have a conversation about what they'd imagine the tree to look like in 5 years, 10 years. And I think you literally see it in people's eyes where they're like, oh my God, this is my legacy. This is such an amazing gift to give the community. And I've done this with people that are most important to me in my life, my grandkids, and they'll be able to enjoy this and share this with other people for the rest of their lives. And I don't think many community projects can give you such like a feeling of like, I have a legacy now. Like that's such a crazy thing for people to have, and in such a meaningful way. So I love watching that. And I love also during our volunteer days, like we talked about earlier, we'll have like 50 people out there just singing, dancing, we have music, eating. Lots of times there's food when we work, because we're surrounded by it. So if you're not picking it off, someone's brought some to share. And we'll have probably like 8 to 10 people stop who are walking, not involved. And they kind of invite themselves in and they say, I want to know what you're doing here. What are we doing? I'm interested. Maybe I've never worked with plants, but how happy you all seem to be here is pulling me in. Or like, I've always been interested in plants and I would like to share these interests with all of you. It is magnetic in a way that I've never seen or been part of before, that people literally who are driving will park their car and come all the way back down the block to see what's going on. And they love it. And a lot of them stay and they'll just pick up a shovel or like a plant and just start. And it's such an amazing thing. I think when we are feeling so singular in times that are scary and polarizing, and having phones and all of this access to technology all the time doesn't help some people's anxieties. So this is a fun way. I think people realize no one's on their phones. No one's kind of caught up in the bad. Everything that's being emitted from these spaces and by the people who are stewarding them, it's a good time. It's good vibes. And I think people really love that more than ever right now because we need it.
And I will say this, I mean, like one of the things that research from across the, across many decades and across the world shows us is that one of the really important antidotes to authoritarianism is community. People trusting their neighbors and connecting with their neighbors and knowing their neighbors is really important in the fight against authoritarianism. And so as you describe that, the new connections, people feeling safe with each other and the trust, there's so much that we need to do in this moment, but that is a core piece of a foundation that we need to be building in order to be able to resist authoritarianism in our world.
Community is everything. If we have community, we really have so much more than people in power want us to think that we do.
So the last thing I do want to mention is that in the upcoming 2026 legislative session, I do have a piece of legislation that came out of a lot of our conversations and what I've learned from you, Tierney. And so the legislation is sort of twofold. We haven't talked as much about the idea of foraging in naturally occurring forests. But that is another really important thing to be thinking about as we think about how do we make our communities resilient and how do we get access to food and how do we address food insecurity, is that our naturally occurring forests also have food that humans can consume, and we need to consume it and collect it in a way that's responsible. But it can be done. And so right now, foraging is illegal in Maryland on Department of Natural Resources land.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that my legislation does is it creates a permit that's similar to like a hunting permit, but allows for foraging. So that would open up certain lands, certain times of the year, certain species, in the same way that a hunting permit license lets you hunt certain species during certain times of year. And so this foraging permit, which will be available sliding scale for people of different income levels, and folks who are recipients of SNAP have access for free, those kinds of things, but would really give people the ability to do foraging and learn more about foraging in Maryland forests. So that's part of the bill. And then the other really exciting part of the bill is that the money that is generated from those permits would go towards cultivating these human-made food forests, similar to the one that you have cultivated on the Montgomery College campus, that we would have them across on state lands, any state lands, that this would be funding that then would be available to cultivate more food forests. And so we would be talking about access to food within forested areas, but then also really bringing these forests into spaces that right now maybe don't have a lot of green, or the green they have is lawns, which are dead zones, so that don't have a lot of forested areas, and bringing them into those spaces and really kind of having what it is that you're describing at Montgomery College, really getting more of that all across our state. And so that's the legislation I'm putting together. I know that you're working on that with me. And so, folks can reach out to me, reach out to you if they're interested in doing advocacy around that. And really excited to see people. I guess everyone's always welcome to the food forest that you have, many of these other food forests. And maybe we'll put in link notes or something. We'll put in our notes kind of how to get access to, or how to get to these food forests. And we'll also put some mentions in there about the legislation if folks are interested in working on it. So such a pleasure to talk to you today. I look forward to seeing you on the food forest.
Always. Thank you so much.
What are we harvesting right now? It's November right now. We're doing this
This
recording.
is such a good question.
Okay.
We are having some Arctic air blasting our way right now. So it's time for us to grab all the tomatoes. We have so many tomatoes in all of our sites. A lot of them are still green, but I'm a huge, huge supporter of green tomatoes. I understand this can be controversial for some people, but I love green fried tomatoes. I love pickled green tomatoes. I love green tomatoes.
I pickled them. Yeah, my grandmother used to pickle them. I pickle. Mm-hmm.
So we're probably going to be doing a workshop on that on Friday. And like you said, with the foraging bill, we're just so happy that you're able to take this on. We think it's such a great thing to make finally accessible and legal for people to be able to do in a responsible way. And if I could leave the viewers with anything, a quote from my favorite author, Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass and a bunch of other amazing books. She just was on a podcast. And she said she doesn't know how people can learn to respect these spaces and have a relationship with these spaces if they don't get to do it themselves. If you don't pick the berries yourself, how do you learn? And I think spaces like this are really going to allow people to foster a relationship with the land that we've lost. And the more that we have that relationship, the more that we care, the more that we can do, and the better we all are for it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Delegate. We look forward to seeing you.